will say something like all your files have been encrypted. If you want to get your files back, then you're going to have to pay cryptocurrency to this address. So it's a pretty alarming thing. And when folks are in that situation, now got to decide what to do.
Ransomware can hit any company. It's not just large companies. And when it hits a small business, it can actually put you out of business. So you've got to be really careful. Discussing ransomware protection today is Ikaru CEO Ann Westerheim joining me. Ann, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. Thanks for having me today.
Well, let's get right into what happens if you get hit with ransomware. What's the first thing a company should do?
All right, well, if you get hit with ransomware, first of all, to a lot of small businesses, it's going to be a big surprise because you may read about major cyber events in the news, but half of events are hitting small businesses, and it's just they don't make the national headlines. So, first of all, the way you would know is a pop-up will appear on a screen, and there's actually a demand for ransom. It will say something like, all your files have been encrypted. If you want to get your files back, then you're going to have to pay cryptocurrency to this address. So it's a pretty alarming thing. And when folks are in that situation, now got to decide what to do. First of all, the best defense is planning for this a long time in advance. Yeah. But if you're in this situation, isolate the system. So if you can isolate it off the network, even unplug the network cable, because you don't know at this point how far things have spread. And then the first phone call you need to make is actually to your insurance company. We advise all businesses to carry cyber insurance. If you have cyber insurance, it's very important to connect with them first because they'll have a process and a breach coach. And the last thing you'd want to do is invalidate your insurance by kind of going off on your own and doing some different things. So kind of try to isolate the damage real quick and then get on the phone with the insurance company. And they have forensics and they have a process that they want you to go through, and they have approved people to work with, etc.
So let's talk about why why are small businesses more vulnerable to ransomware?
Yeah, so in terms of statistics, anybody can be hit with ransomware, and it's kind of a myth that attacks are really targeted. You know, people watch a Tom Cruise movie and they think there's some, well, nobody's going to be out to get me. I have this conversation all the time. And in reality, most ransomware attacks or any malware, anything happening online, they're just indiscriminate. So, for example, somebody might some threat actor can send out 1 million emails, doesn't cost them anything, and they can have an attachment on them that would cause ransomware. So small businesses are really vulnerable because they may not know that they're a potential victim. So everybody's a potential target. And also they don't have the right things in place to protect against it. They're often just kind of totally unprepared for the event. And that puts them at a great disadvantage. And that's where loss of reputation, a lot of ramifications of an attack.
Is it just emails that the way people sneak in? Is that the most common way, or are there other ways that people get attacked by ransomware?
Yeah, well, sort of social engineering through email is a really common technique, and that's where, watch out for anything coming into your inbox. There's a lot of things you can do about that. Some of it's cyber awareness training with your employees, but that's just like a really easy way, to basically get in the front door. But also things like compromised credentials or brute force attacks they could get in. Firewalls, if you look at the SonicWall firewall reports, there's attempts on firewalls just all the time because people use automated tools and they just, it's like a thief trying to steal a car. It's like, okay, any just pull on the hand, any of these unlocked, any doors unlocked. If they find one that's unlocked, they're gonna, that's where the crime's gonna be.
Mm-hmm. So. That's interesting you say, because sometimes people think, oh, it's a targeted attack, but what you're saying, it's really just they're throwing a net out there and seeing what comes back.
Yeah, because these automated tools, there's actually ransomware kits as a service. So people who, they don't even have to be programmers or hackers, they can buy these crime tools on the dark web, get set up. Some of the organizations are quite sophisticated and they have they're full businesses that they're running, and they can blast out millions of emails or run scanners on firewalls, compromise credentials. brute force attacks. If you have easy passwords, they just, keep try, is this the password? Is that the password? But they're not guessing, like, I wonder what their dog's name is. They're just
Yeah.
trying everything, and it's automated. So they can go
Hmm.
lightning fast. By the way,
Mm.
lockouts, 3 strikes, you're out. A lockout, an account lockout can help for things like that.
Mm. Do you have stories of people that have come to you as a managed service provider in Boston to get help when they've been hit by ransomware?
Yeah, we've had a few over the years, and what's interesting is, in our line of work, we get these phone calls, and somebody, will, what do we do in this situation? And so we've assisted with some of the recovery, but I think that if you look around small businesses in the Boston area, nobody knows who has been hit. Now, in
Hmm.
our line of work, and obviously we operate under confidentiality, so we can't talk about what we see and who we work with. But
Hmm.
it's I could say it's a big giant surprise. So people thought like, oh, I never thought this could happen to me, and that's the most common thing. And it's not in the news. You,
When someone gets attacked, how much ransom do people ask for? What is there a range? Like if you're a larger company, they're going to ask for more. If you're a smaller company, they're going to ask for less.
there's kind of a wide range of numbers. Like a lot of times, when you read through the fine print of various attacks, a lot of times they don't even know who they've got initially.
Mm.
So you read
Mm.
some high profile cases where it was very low ransomware demand, and then it changes over time. I think the demands got too high, and it's just, a small business can't pay it, so there's nothing they can do in that
Mm.
situation. And then there's another ransomware gang I've recently read about, kind of referred to as the Walmart of ransomware, where they just have a lot of lower priced ransom requests. So if you imagine, they kind of make it up in volume. So people
Hmm.
will think, okay, I'll just pay the ransom, and make this problem go away. Now, first of all, you're interacting with criminals. You don't know if the problem will go away. You've just raised your hand and said you're willing to pay. Not a
Mm.
good thing. And now there's reporting requirements for that too. So there's repercussions if you wind up paying a group that's maybe using their funding to fund terrorists. Now you could be in trouble with the federal government. So
Wow.
there's reporting rules around it.
Mm.
It's a big giant mess. So really the best thing to do is do everything you can to not be in that situation.
Get ahead of it, yeah. And so, and is there a guarantee that if somebody did pay the ransom, that they'd actually get their data back?
Yeah, well, there's to some degree there's honor among thieves,
Yeah.
because the whole business model doesn't work if people don't get their stuff back,
Yeah.
right? So, but not always. And I've read of many cases where folks they won't get their data back. The other thing to remember is, with all of cybersecurity, it's kind of a cat and mouse game. So,
Mm.
the best way, you can recover if you have a strong, a robust, isolated backup that's separated, from the network, protected. You can recover from backup,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So, backup is one of the best things to make you cyber resilient. But now the bad actors have figured that out. And so if you say, hey, I'm not paying the ransom, I've got this backup, now they're doing double extortion and triple extortion. So what they'll say is, if you think that, okay, well, I've got a great backup, I will recover, I'm not paying the ransom, they're going to come back and say, okay, well, we're going to expose all your data. So,
Oh, wow.
sort of in
That's,
years past, ransomware was really, I would say, a giant act of vandalism. We're
hmm.
going to destroy your company unless you pay us, right?
Hmm.
And people think like, oh, I'll just start over. How long can you operate if you can't bill clients, receive money, operate? You're not going to last very long in that situation. So now the
Hmm.
bad actors, with double extortion, they'll threaten to expose the information. So now,
Wow.
if you're
Yeah.
a medical office, now that is an HIPAA, you're in a lot of trouble at that point. So
Mm.
it's data exfiltration. So in the old days, they just kind of went in, did the vandalism, and nowadays they kind of maybe would look around a little bit, see what they got, and then threaten to expose all the data. Yeah, and then there's even triple extortion, where they'll actually go after your. So let's say you're an accounting firm, they might threaten to expose all your data. So that's going to completely ruin your reputation.
Hmm.
In triple extortion, they're going to go after your end clients and go for extorting them.
Mm.
So it's a big giant mess.
So, and let's talk about how a business can identify the risks and how vulnerable they are, and then we'll talk about how they can protect themselves. So, ransomware protection in Boston is something that you
Yeah.
provide, and so how does somebody know how at risk they are?
Okay. Well, so the first thing I want to say is that one of the mistakes small businesses in the Boston area, anywhere, would make is think that, okay, I read about MGM, I read about Colonial Pipeline, this can't happen to me. So threats are indiscriminate, they can happen to anybody. And then, sort of, the second thing is, gosh, well, what can I do? I don't have the budget. If big
Hmm.
corporations are getting hit, how can I even compete against that? And the idea is you don't want to be the unlocked car in the parking lot. So, first thing to do is to do a risk assessment. So, a lot of folks work with our company, Karu, in the Boston area to do a risk assessment, and they can be very, they're sized for a small business. So, for example, when we work with clients, we have a cybersecurity training platform that comes with a very basic risk assessment process, but it's a great starting point. So you go through and kind of go through the questions. Another approach to do is NIST, National Institutes of Standard and Technology, and CIS, Center for Internet Security. Both have published online. It's free. You can just go Google CIS controls. There's 18 different controls. They're in 3 different implementation groups, so basic, medium, advanced.
Hmm.
And for free, you can go out there and just sort of start working a program within your company. And they all start with identify. I think whether it's NIST or CIS. So don't get intimidated by all the jargon. Just look at the CIS controls just as a starting point. And it
Hmm.
starts very simple. It's identify what are your digital assets, what are the pieces of technology, your accounting system, where do you store your client information, your work products, where's your data located.
Hmm.
It winds up being a lot more complicated than it looks, though, because you start thinking, well, gee, so and so is saving all their data on their laptop. The server's being backed up, the laptop's not being backed up. But just start thinking about, okay, where's all your data? And then if something were to happen, what piece of technology do you really need to have up and running first to just be able to operate? That's all about cyber resilience. And a lot of people will talk about assume a breach, like it's going to happen. So just think about, okay, what do you do next? And this could be pretty basic. So, for example, if all your computer systems are, say, taken out, everything's shut down for a ransomware attack, okay, if your company contact list is on your computer, for example, you're not going to be able to access it. So think about that in advance. Like, who do you contact? Your contacts at your insurance company. All of those things can be done, but just go through a basic risk assessment. And then also, when we work with clients, we like to do vulnerability scans and just sort of automatically scan and just see, is everything patched, is everything up to date? So keeping security patches up to date, critically important, and doing some cyber awareness training with your employees. So think of the scenario where we're hiring. I get an email with a resume, and I think, okay, this one, I don't have time to look at it. So I forward it to you, Raj, and say, hey, can you
Hmm.
check this out? So now you've received an email from a trusted person,
Hmm.
me, and you might think, okay, I better look at that right away. Anne asked me to do that. So that's where the social engineering comes into play. So that security awareness training. There's
Hmm.
humans in front of keyboards still,
Hmm.
right? So we need to train the humans.
Yeah, those are very sneaky ways that ransomware can get through. And so it sounds like there's a bit to do, even though they can get started with some of those guidelines that you mentioned as best
Mhm.
practices. But having a professional company kind of guide you, hold your hand through the whole process, can kind of keep your mind at ease that you've got all the bases covered. What kind of services does Ikaru provide to help people do ransomware protection in Boston?
Yeah, so for doing ransomware protection, first of all, we advise people to go through and create, with us a comprehensive program. So again, within a small business budget, you do need to have backups. Um, an incident response plan could be very, very basic. The other thing, though, now there's technology that's affordable in the small business space. So there's technology called Manage, Detect, and Respond. And we advise every client to have that on their system. So it basically, antivirus back in the day would operate based on definitions of threats. So something gets out there, oh, now we know, okay, that's a virus, and it's going to block it everywhere. Like, say, an emerging ransomware attack. And that's one thing I want to say. A lot of people think, okay, like, let's say you do click on that resume that I send you, that I forwarded to you, right? You might
Hmm.
open it. It's like, oh no, I'm not supposed to open attachments, but nothing happened. I'm good, right? That ransomware notice may not show up for days, weeks, even months. So you might think, oh, must have dodged a bullet there. That one, no problem
Hmm.
there. So what managed detect and response software does is it looks for changes in your computer that you wouldn't even notice. So changes in the registry, so sort of deep down in the brains of the computer operating system, it's going to look for changes and say, okay, wait a second, why this program should not be making a change in the registry? Something's wrong here. So it detects behaviors, not definitions of problems, and that's the big fundamental difference. And we've now reached a point where we mandate that. Um, we do have a couple of folks who have opted out, and we try to bring everybody along the sort of a roadmap of cybersecurity, but that plus threat hunting, which works hand in hand with that. So, for example, on a somewhat regular basis, we'll see an account, a computer just isolated from the network. So, what it does is say something weird is happening here. It isolates it from the network through software. So you don't have to go call somebody, go find, system number 75 in the corner on the second floor and unplug it. It will do it by software. And then it can be taken into a clean environment and evaluated, and it prevents it from spreading through the network. And that all happens with automation. And that's all very affordable to a small business. The other thing with the threat hunting, we put canaries on systems. So, the metaphor of the canary in the coal mine, they want to make sure there's enough oxygen down there. So we will, through the software, we put in little detection programs that will, if somebody touches this program, like it's a fake program, nothing should be accessing this piece of, bits on the hard drive. If it is touched, then we know something weird is going on. And again, so that's that canary in the coal mine. And then the other thing now that's become very affordable to small business is zero trust, the concept of zero trust. So it means you allow, here's the programs our company uses. If it's not on this list, we don't allow it. So you block everything else.
Hmm.
So, and that includes ransomware, right? And then the other thing is within that, like this concept of what are programs allowed to do. And one thing that people don't realize, like just the way Windows is architected, or any modern computer, like any program could access, has sort of the rights to access anything else on the computer.
Hmm.
And so the additional step in allow listing is saying, okay, well, yeah, this script should never be running. So maybe you need to use something like PowerShell that's being used, but it should never be touching this other stuff. Or Microsoft Word should never be running this. So it just says not only you're only going to allow these applications, you're saying these applications are only allowed to do the things we say. And that starts getting kind of into advanced concepts, but like for that, like I don't know, like a latte and a half a month, you could have that protection, right?
Wow,
It's
that's
not
pretty
it.
cheap.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cheap to like sleep better at night knowing that you've got
Yeah.
your IT button down. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Hmm.
absolutely. And it's and I think that's really the great news, that a lot of really great technology is now accessible to small business.
I like how that's a lot of great takeaways there. I mean, you basically shared a complete list of things that a company could do to defend themselves against these ransomware attacks. And so that's a really nice starting point. And I like that they can actually just work with Ikaru just to go through that whole thing, make sure that they got everything all squared away. You'd mentioned that employee training is a pretty important part of the whole process. Can you talk to that for a moment?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really important for leaders. And if you're running a 5-person small business in the Boston area or a much bigger company, creating a culture of cybersecurity awareness is so important, because it's really going to boil down to what the people do in front of the screen. So, one incident that we saw years back, there was an employee, really hard worker, got an email that said there was a Dun and Bradstreet sort of a negative mark against the company or his Better Business Bureau. And it was a fake. But that employee, being a hard worker, is like, oh well, I don't want anybody saying anything bad about our company, and just went and kept trying to open the file, and every piece of protection was stopping that file from being opened. But somehow this person, like, I don't know, copied it, did something, opened it up, and actually wound up infecting the network with ransomware. And that years ago, before other great protections were in place. And just stopping for a moment and thinking, like, why won't this file open? And maybe questioning that, or just knowing that top impersonated brand. So it's around the holidays, you're going to see a lot of, hey, we couldn't deliver this package to you. Click on this. And that might come in even via text.
Mm-hmm.
Don't click on that. Don't give your credit card. Don't do anything with that. But the idea of training is to kind of expose everybody to all the different scams that are out there, the gift card scams. Like we've seen them all. And I got a call from a president of an engineering company in the area that we work with. And he said, Ann, I am so embarrassed. I was going to call my bank. So I just Googled Bank of America and called the number that came up on top. Those are the ads, and he wound up calling a scammer. So even Google ads can be fake. It's illegal, but that doesn't stop criminals, right? So he inadvertently called a number that he thought was Bank of America. He started working with somebody online. Every time he got suspicious, this person had like a magnificent script to build his trust back again. He said, I'm so embarrassed I fell for this, but anybody could. But if you know, though, wait a second, I'm not going to call the number that comes up on the screen because I heard through my training that somebody could take out a fraudulent ad. And their ads, they look like regular Google, but they say sponsored next to them, right? So anybody could do it. So, but if you have that little piece of information, it might just give you enough of a pause. Wait a second, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call the number on the back of my credit card, or contact the bank in a way I know is secure.
And I think a lot of times these phishing attacks, for example, they'll use a company's brand just altered ever so slightly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a misspelling, and those are easier to detect, but sometimes it could be Bank of America -secureemail.com and something like that. So you might think, oh, that's something that Bank of America is doing, but they're not, and it's a scam.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And they're really tough to spot. But if you get a little nugget of information along the way that says, hey, this email could look really great. Anything that comes in from Microsoft, and by the way, Microsoft doesn't call people to tell them there's a problem on their computer, but people will see that and they think, okay, for $40, I can make my problem go away. Let me just do what this person says. And then before you know it, they're in your bank account. But if you build that culture of cyber awareness, and the other thing is reporting it. And I didn't mention all the different protections. So for example, with the whole concept of data exfiltration, you could put safeguards within your environment to look for when large amounts of data are moving. And you can prevent that. Very affordable for small business. If somebody breaks into an email account and they're logging in some foreign country, you can detect that, and you can just say, hey, if this login occurs in a place I don't expect, shut the account down. Now, there's a inconvenience versus security thing there, but I think that's another really important point about training is to educate people why you're doing that. So if you travel and you didn't put in sort of the travel alert that says I'm going to be in France or whatever, and your account gets shut down, you're probably going to be really mad. But if you explain to people that security is really everybody's responsibility, and there are times we're going to be inconvenienced, but this is why we're doing this, I think people have better buy-in, and they're not so quick to say, oh, this security scan slowed down my system, remove it. And we occasionally hear that, and it just, seeing what I see on a regular basis and knowing the companies around here that have been hit with security incidents, I can't say to them who they are, but it's like, no, just do these basic things. And then also going through the insurance questionnaires now are getting really, really detailed. There are some small businesses in the Boston area that will say, I'm not going to get cyber insurance. We would recommend everybody get that coverage in this day and
Mhm.
age. But even if a small business decides not to, look at the questionnaires, because the insurance companies ask for certain things for a reason, because they've seen all the incidents. So they're asking for multi-factor authentication for a reason, right?
Mhm.
They're asking now, they're looking for things like manage, detect, and respond for a reason. So imagine, one person clicks on something and gets a full-blown ransomware event. Another business, somebody clicks on something and it just stops it right there. That's who the insurance company
Mhm.
wants to work with.
Yeah, all very important details. And
Yeah.
so, if somebody's listening and they want to get a start on what to do next, what's their best bet? Do you have a checklist that you would be able to share with people? You've got a book that you could also share with people about cybersecurity. Maybe just talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So, one of the things that's been a mission for me is I really want to build confidence in people. A lot of people hear all the acronyms and the this and the that, and they just kind of toss their hands up and say, "Hey, there's nothing I can do." Well, there are a lot of smart and affordable things that businesses in the Boston area, anywhere, can do to protect themselves against cybercrime. So I put some thoughts together in a book, very easy to read. It has cartoons, very short chapters, but it's Cybersecurity for Main Street, Cyber Fit in 21 Days. So
Hmm.
it's designed like kind of a diet fitness book, but it's a cartoon to open each chapter, a couple of very basic tips, and I really tried to put things in sort of phrases that everybody can understand. So it does get into, talk about encryption. Encryption's not the same as password protection,
Hmm.
basic things like that. But I'd say don't be afraid of security. Please don't think that security is only an issue for big companies, because with automated threats, anybody can be a victim. And then check out things like the CIS controls. Just go through, read control one, implementation group 1.1. Just take a look at it, and then start thinking about, what technology and what data is really critical for running your business. What data might you hold that's protected? So any
Hmm.
business, even if you have just a couple of employees, if you have social security numbers or anything like that in your system, in Massachusetts, there's the Massachusetts Data Protection Law. There's certain guidelines around how to safeguard that information. And it's real simple stuff, like a reasonable method of uh, having strong and passwords, and controlling who has access to them. So what I tell
Hmm.
people is no sticky note with your password under your keyboard, right?
Right.
So
That, yeah.
yeah, so cybersecurity can get super deep really fast, and there's a lot of advanced concepts, but strong passwords, so the things I write about in the book: strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. I tell people there's no way you're going to have, average person has about 100 passwords. You got banks and online, social media, everything. There is no way you can remember 100 strong and unique passwords unless you're a Guinness Book of World Records memory expert, right? So use a
Hmm.
password manager.
Hmm.
That's a simple way to do that. And also, but change your passwords over time. Even if it's just taking an article and discussing it with your team, and letting people know that security is important, and get people kind of part of that mission. I think every small business has a great relationship with their clients. You want to protect your clients. And if your business gets hit, you're going to impact your clients. It's not just you.
Hmm.
So do it for the community as well.
And if you want the confidence of having a professional company help you with ransomware protection in Boston, they can reach out to Ikaru. Can
Yeah.
you share some contact information about how people can connect with you?
Yeah, so we're located in the Boston suburbs. Our phone number is 978-692-4200. Info at ikaru.com. So that's EKARU.com. That goes to a group of us here at the company. And I'm very active on LinkedIn with cybersecurity tips. So that's Ann Westerheim on LinkedIn. And I love to get questions from people and just interact. And we can do basic security assessments for folks. We also do a lot of webinars and training that's just open to anybody. So if you ever just want to join one of our sessions, just let me know.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very insightful conversation about ransomware protection in the Boston area. And thanks again.
All right, thank you.